What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here with Billy Schmid, ready to carry the G, the podcast, the radio, whatever the hell we're calling this. Billy, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Resting and recovering from a hell of a Tuesday night and a
Yes,
heck of a
sir.
draft weekend.
A big draft weekend, but we'll get to that in a second, Mr. Jumbotron. There I am, like watching the game, checking Twitter, just living my life, right? And then I see my co-host on the Jumbotron at the Bucks playoff game. How did this transpire? We'll get to the draft stuff, but like there you are, all of a sudden, as big as life, in front of everybody, chugging a beer. How did that transpire?
Well, it transpired next by I had to do my 111th, and once I realized that the energy needed to be brought into the building, I took it upon
Nice.
myself. I believe it was a 31-27 game to inject some life into the building. And Wes Hodkowitz, luckily, I appreciate Wes, keeping a track. He said Bucks are like plus 27 since this video happened.
I mean,
they might have to thank him.
That feels like some real analytic work right there.
Honestly, no. They put me up on the screen as I was about to take a drink, and then I said, "Well, I'm just gonna keep going until they take me off."
Right.
And I look out of the corner of my eye after about 2 seconds, and I'm still up there. And that was when I was pot committed and said,
Right,
I'm finishing this thing. There's
all
no
in,
way.
all in. And then you get the shout out from David Bakhtiari on Twitter telling you what a good job you did. I mean, come on. It's like you're picking up the mantle.
That's validation. I mean, like
right?
that is the moment where you realize that all that hard work and all those moments in college where I probably
Right.
should have been studying just a little
Yep.
bit harder, and instead me and the boys decided to do a case race.
Yep.
It all paid off.
See?
That's what the tuition dollars were going to.
I mean, different horses for different courses. We all have focuses, and your focus has now paid off. And that's
it was so much fun.
I'm just telling you, I was so happy for you. I couldn't believe it. Like, at that point, the game became secondary. Like, all I did was I just kind of watched that video on repeat because it was so dope.
Well, the funniest thing is, like, I knew it. I had a couple of my friends texting me about it. They're like, "Hey, man, you're really going on this." And then once I got home,
oh yeah,
I started scrolling and realized just how many people had started to see it. It was a really, really good time. And more importantly, shout out to a friend of mine for it was an early wedding present and heck of a groomsman gift to be getting tickets.
Hell
to
yes.
that game. So
I mean, yeah, and you were right down there too.
Oh yeah,
dude, come on now, that was awesome. Clearly, big Bucks win because Billy was in the house. I mean, I think you can draw that line.
That's
very, very.
I mean,
obvious.
it's a pretty easy one. Yep.
Obviously, the other line you can draw is the Green Bay Packers selecting 11 new men to represent the green and gold, along with a 8-man undrafted free agent class. Billy, let's just start at the top, right? I mean, first of all, let me get your 30,000-foot take here. As far as it's funny that they took 11 guys, right?
Yep.
Coming into the draft, they had 11 selections, but they traded a couple of times, but they still ended up with 11 players coming out of this draft. Were you surprised they added that many bodies, given that they added, 13 last year and now 11 this year?
Yeah, a little bit, especially in the pre-draft. Like, you had just assumed that they were going to make moves and assumed that they would take less. But I do start taking a little bit more of what Goody said at that Monday presser to be real, where he focused on the amount of competition that they wanted to bring in. And I think it was Pete Doherty, might be wrong, on the question of like, hey, so you guys are just going to be the youngest team in football every year, right? Like,
I think it was Pete. Yeah.
He's like, and he said it just like that. So you guys are just going to be the youngest team in football every year, where there's something about the competitiveness of young players coming into the league, trying to earn their keep, that I think was a little bit intoxicating to LaFleur and Goody last year, where realized if we think our coaching staff is as good as we believe they are, and that we will continually get better throughout the season, why not get younger players where their ceiling can be higher year in and year out? And, oh, by the way, they're cheaper. So once you hit,
a lot of cheap labor,
you feel a lot better about extending, one veteran who is a full part of your football team, like maybe Kenny Clark this year.
Well, and that's the thing,
a year
right?
too long.
You talk about all this youth, and no doubt youth is going to be served in Green Bay yet again in 2024. But along the way, you are undoubtedly identifying guys who you think are going to make up the core of your program, right? So down the line, we're going to have some decisions to make. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
But those are a few years away. Right now, to your point, I really really got excited by just looking at the draft afterwards and thinking about all that competition you're talking about, and how not only the guys pushing each other, whatever, but the fact that the talent floor of this roster should only kind of elevate, to a point
Yeah.
where they're going to be having to let go of some pretty talented players at the end of training camp. I mean, right now, I've
Hmm.
clearly got a long way to go. Get the pads on. Let's see what these kids can do, etc. But theoretically, that's the exciting part for me. It's like you're going to continue to see the development and the growth from a lot of these young guys. But man, the fact that this team so quickly from a team that was so veteran laden 2 years ago, right, to now all of a sudden young, scrappy, and much, much, much more talented. That's so exciting to me.
Yeah, and I thought one of the other facets of it, and maybe it wasn't the initial game plan or one of the initial reasons for it, was the fact that you don't get backed up into a wall on feeling like you have to extend players because
Right.
you're kind of backed up into a corner with the lack of
Hmm.
depth, right? Like, I mean, now you can go into the year saying we hope that we are signing Josh Myers to an extension at the end of this year, meaning he played good enough football that it
Yep.
validates everyone's questions. And we believe that our best five includes him being a part of it. But if it doesn't, they think that they have three guys that can go and play center, and you don't have to go and draft a replacement to start week one or sign one in free agency because you have options. Like it seems to, especially at that position in particular, give them more options to feel like, yeah, we don't have to double down on a potential mistake once it comes up to signing and re-upping.
Well, that's the thing too. You look at the Myers thing is I think a bit of a linchpin too, because of the way they went about addressing the offensive line this year. We
Mm-hmm.
knew they would, right? After last season, didn't take a single offensive lineman for the first time in forever. This year, they absolutely attacked both, the perimeter and the interior of the line. But center is so interesting because, you know, the fact that Myers is going into the final year of his deal still means he's cheap labor, right? And he's a guy who's
Mm-hmm.
played a
Totally.
ton of ball for you in this offense, knows it like the back of his hand, and has a year of experience now working with Jordan, right? So it makes sense to keep him around. Hope, like you say, that he continues to develop. He's still a young player, but
Mm-hmm.
man, there's certainly been some, okay, we got a plan for if that doesn't work. And I think particularly the Monk selection for me is about that plan as far as back in the day when Ted was still running things, he would do, I mean, all the time. We used to joke, like, you would just look at expiring contracts the following year, and you
Mm-hmm.
could almost bank on at least one or two of those positions coming up in the Packers draft. Because to your point, it's like, okay, we're going to develop, but if it doesn't make sense to reinvest in this player, then let's have their replacements on the ready, so to speak.
Yep. And the Monk thing even more solidified the thought that they're going to give Jordan Morgan every chance to go and win the left tackle job.
Oh, zeroed. I keep saying
Right.
I understand he could end up playing guard, right? That's the fallback. At least that's the way I'm looking at it, right? Like, okay, you put him at left tackle and it's not really working. Okay, yeah, he can go and slide in and play guard. That's the way I think they're looking at it. Like they think he's the left tackle. That's the way I look at it. I don't know about
Yeah.
you.
I'm in the same boat. And to me, like thinking somebody can go play guard is like being out at the bar and saying, I think I could go to Taco Bell on the way home. Right? Like one of those where it's like, yeah, you probably know that is a
What a
100%
pull.
guarantee. Right? Like because there's
Right.
it's
Right.
difficult for any offensive lineman, I think, that is good enough and athletic enough to play tackle or smart enough and physical enough and quick enough to be able to play center and get into nose tackles that
Mhm.
you're going to be able to figure it out if you're at guard, right? Like, I mean, not that it is too easy and dummy
Right.
proof, but like
Right.
that's what it makes it sound like. But you don't have to be as sudden to be a center and
Mhm.
athletic enough to be a tackle. You can just be a really, really good boxer, smart, and a physical football player and play guard. It makes way too much sense for them to try him for every option, expound every opportunity for him to play tackle because that position is so much more valuable.
Yeah.
And the the interior, especially at center, it's one thing that you think everybody should be able to do, but not everybody thinks that they or everyone believes they should be able to snap.
Oh man,
Not that many can.
we've seen some we've seen some evidence of this, even in Wisconsin, at least the collegiate level.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Amen.
there's no doubt. And hey, you're the offensive lineman, right? You're the O line coach here. I think the way they've kind of positioned all of these different kind of bodies being able to get after it. I mean, no one should feel secure other than maybe Elton Jenkins and Zach Tom. Like I think that's the list, right?
Yes.
Everybody else is fighting for it. And that's the way it should be. And that's what
Hmm.
Gutekunst has been talking about, right? Competition in every room. Well, here you go. Because there's gonna be.
Yeah, and just because Josh Myers, if he does not start at center, doesn't mean that he couldn't be starting at right guard, right? Like, I mean, that's
Absolutely.
where
That's
they're going to
part of the
give
competition, right?
everybody's going to have a chance to win one of those gigs. And like Rasheed Walker started playing really good football at the end of the year. So
He did.
did Myers, but that's where. Hey man, this is as you always say, it's show business, not show friends.
That's correct.
Just because you showed us something last year, it is what are you doing for me right now? Not what have you done for me lately? It's
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing for me right now? And they're going to have so many options up front that at a position where you're always going to have injury,
Yep.
they're pretty well protected right now from an injury at all any one of those 5 spots.
And we say all this, and now watch. They get on the field this summer, and we're sitting there on the sideline watching them with the pads on, and you and I are looking at each other going, "Oh no!" Like that's always a possibility, right?
Only 3 of
Like
these guys can play.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like you have all these plans and ideas, and it's oh we can move him there, whatever. And then they get on the field, and it's like, do not ever put him there. Like you cannot handle that. Like that's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, totally. And just because Jordan Morgan's going to have every chance to win that starting left tackle job,
Right.
doesn't mean he will. Because, like I said,
Yeah.
I did really think Rasheed started playing extremely well at the end of the year, and he is extremely athletic out on the outside. Maybe he's over at right tackle if that's the move. But Jordan Morgan at left tackle, they were very, very staunch in saying, you play 2,400 snaps over there. Good
You're
luck
a left tackle.
going and winning this thing.
Right, exactly. Let's stick on the offensive side of the ball. We'll get obviously a lot of additions on defense, but let's stay on the offensive side of the ball and touch on Marshawn Lloyd real quickly because I just talked about him on Packers Daily earlier today. Man, I would, you know me, I'm not a huge college football guy. Wasn't really familiar with his game, to quote Shaq, but I went and watched him today. Billy, this guy's going to be on the field.
Yep.
Like, I understand there's going to be a rotation. I understand Josh Jacobs is your lead guy. I get all that. This guy's going to be on the field, and he's going to be involved in the passing game at the very least. I'm excited as hell after watching this kid's tape. Like, this guy can ball.
Yeah, and he played at USC, and the only reason why more people didn't realize it was because they were down 14 in every game.
Right.
Right? I mean, they were always in retreat mode.
How many Saturday nights were you like, late night, 10:30 p.m. There's USC, and they're down 41-17.
Yeah, yeah. Luckily, bet a lot of overs in those games, and he was a part of it, dude. And the day of the second round, we were trying to debate who was going to be the number 1 guy, and Brooks ends up being the number 1. He was the betting favorite, but I thought Lloyd was going to be a wild card if somebody would fall in love with what you said, the clear pass catching ability at the next level. Like that's what you're generating him for, and your fastest way to getting onto the field as a youngster. And they talk about how physically built he is and how solid he is. That only allows you to be on the field more in pass rush
and passing
situations.
You got to be able. If
you can't protect, you're not going to be on the field.
Yep, 100%. I actually asked him that question, like legit. Only thing I asked him in the Zoom availability afterwards. I'm like, how do you take pride in your pass protection? Because that's all the coaches ever talk about when it comes to young backs getting on the field. He sounds ready, man. He sounds like he's gunning up for it. So I'm excited to see him out there. But man, just watching him, I'm like, they could use him in the passing game today. Like they could send him. They could use like they could send him out in routes.
Yes,
like,
a lot of all the passing situations.
So excited.
Yeah, all the passing situation stuff that you were doing with Aaron Jones, not only Josh Jacobs can do like that. Not that you have to outsource that situation, that job to somebody else. Josh Jacobs can do it, but Marshawn Lloyd, knowing that he's going to be able to fit that bill, very happy.
No question about it. All right, now let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball and go through these guys because, Man, there's a lot of potential here. It's so interesting how the draft kind of fell the way it did, and the Packers really hit on needs. Like we
Mhm.
always talk about best player available. It's always, almost always, really best player available at a position of need. And you know, man, if the Packers didn't just kind of keep hitting on their needs, whether it was linebacker, whether it was safety, tripling up at safety. We'll start with Edrin Cooper. It was so funny because it's almost, I'm not going to say a letdown, but it was like I've done so much work on him prior to the draft. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, this makes all the sense in the world. There's a decent chance it happens. And then it happened that they selected him. And I'm like, yep, that makes sense. Like, it was
Mhm.
weird because it was, normally I think that kind of selection, a middle linebacker who was going to play middle in this scheme, somebody who's you're going to see a whole lot of. I would have thought I'd be more excited about it, but I think just because it was not a foregone conclusion, but I was like, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world if that happens. It was like, yep, yep, okay, check that box.
See, and that's strange for you as a content guy, because generally content guy just immediately goes, "I'm gonna dunk on everybody and grab
Yeah,
every receipt possible."
yeah,
But you're right. It made so much sense that it didn't even make sense to dunk on it,
right.
because it was just like, sweet, they got a really good player.
Got the
We're all gonna
linebacker.
love him,
Check.
and all right, I don't have to do any more work on it. No,
Yeah,
I'm right. I'm right there with you, because it was so clear and obvious, their biggest position where you could have somebody walk in day one and contribute. And
yes,
he, to me, seemed like the easiest dude to know be a day one contributor. Peyton Wilson, talent wise, in his tape, for sure. The medicals, I just don't know how teams are fathoming thinking you have a 3 to 4 year player when Cooper was on the board. And that's why it fell the way it did, that he goes
yeah,
45 and Wilson goes whatever it was, 90 something.
yeah.
He's that good. And to go leading your team in tackles, TFL, sacks, and forced fumbles in the SEC.
That's an active dude right there.
Yeah, he's an active dude that plays into exactly what I think Packer fans have salivated over, was the
Yes,
thought of your pairing of Devin White and Levante David, your pairing of Nick Bolton and Willie Gay, two dudes that are both sideline to sideline, both
yes.
attacking
Athletic as
blitzers,
hell, getting after
athletic
it.
as
Yep.
hell.
I
Yep.
can't wait. I can't wait. And then, obviously they took the three safeties. You got Javon Bullard, got Evan Williams, and my guy, Katan Oladapo, who is officially the breaker of the Aaron Nagler draft crush curse, because it's the first time ever in the history of Cheesehead TV where I've had a draft crush that I've put out there publicly that the Packers actually selected.
Let's
It's
go.
it's amazing. I can't believe it. I love this kid. Oladapo for me is probably the most complete guy as far as he can do whatever they're going to ask him to do from scrimmage. Like there's nothing he can't do. Now, I'm not going to tell you he's like going to be an all pro right away or anything like that, but I love his game. I love how physical he is. And what's funny is I get the sense that he's gonna have to fight to get on the field, just because
Yeah,
I suspect Bullard's probably gonna get first crack at most
for
of the
sure. He's
stuff
gonna have a
opposite
chance
of
to win it.
McKinney.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, and the thing is too, he's gonna contribute exactly where they'll need him to on special teams all
Yeah.
over the place,
Oh yeah,
right?
big time.
I mean, that size is for real, that he brings, right? I
Yes,
mean, he's
right.
a legit 6'2", legit 220, and he's a thumper. Like
Yep.
that's a lot of fun. And they brought in him and Williams, who are both, I think, as clear cut special teams aces as possible, who can compete for one of those, that nickelback spot where we were talking about on the radio show today. I don't know, I just don't know where they funnel it to, right? Like Keyshawn
That's what's
Nixon's
gonna be
going to have
fascinating. I
the
think
best
there's
chance
there's
to be the leader in the clubhouse,
the
but
nickel, right? That as far as who's going to
yeah,
be that extra guy, so to speak, because it doesn't always have to be a corner. It could be a three safety system. It could be matchup dependent. Could be scheme matchup dependent. That's the other thing. Like if you're facing a team that likes to typically try to spread you out, but only to create lanes to run the ball. There are teams that attack
hmm,
certain defenses different ways, and I think there's plenty of kind of ammunition now for Halfley to come up with lots of different packages as far as, okay, against this kind of scheme and against that kind of team, we are going to run X, and it's going to be that package would include a few more safety bodies, right? Where, okay, this is a more traditional West Coast spread you out, kind of make the receivers win one-on-one at the line, etc. Maybe that's something where we see a little bit more Keyshawn Nixon rather than the
yep.
safeties. There are a lot of ways they could go here. And that's one of the things between the offensive line competition and how the safeties shake out, and really the nickel spot shakes out. Those are the two things I'm most fascinated to track during training camp.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how, like, just thinking about the way you explained it right there, a San Francisco week, you know that you're going to go three safeties because you
Exactly.
know that you're going to have to tackle.
Exactly.
But where Keyshawn had arguably his biggest and most important game against Kansas City,
Yep.
why would you possibly think that they're going to run the ball as much as they would have to?
Yep.
It's the thought is just get one guy that can do multiple things, or get multiple guys that can all do one thing really, really well,
Right.
and you can be a little bit more matchup specific. It's gonna be fun, man. We're gonna
Oh,
find out a lot about Jeff Halfley and how creative he wants to get right out of the gates.
yes, sir. Absolutely. And then we get to the late part of the draft. I think both of their seventh round picks are fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Michael Pratt, the quarterback out of Tulane. I love this pick. I love that they've added a quarterback to the competition, to the room to kind of push Clifford, right? I think there's every chance that, like, look, we got to get to camp. We got to see it on the field. I understand. But, like, there's no way in my mind that, like, preseason doesn't become like the showdown between Pratt and Clifford, with one of them landing on the 53 and the other one on the practice squad. Like, there's a decent chance that Pratt could come in and be a legit competitor for this backup spot.
Yeah, I mean, he's won. Like, he
A lot.
won a lot of
Right.
games
Right.
against a lot of different competition. I mean, he did USC have every single player that they had anticipated having in that bowl game? No, but he still went out and beat Caleb Williams in the bowl game. So, like,
Right.
I love it. I think that I thought he was a fourth or fifth round pick, but just like
Yeah. A little
the way the
surprised.
game is slotted, I think that you're going to see so many less of those. If it's not a first round pick, you're going to have
Right.
to go in the fifth, right?
Yeah.
And the thought of a second, third, or fourth round talent at the position is going to be a fifth or a seventh round pick. But Brian then actually goes to what he said he wanted to do, is take a quarterback each and every draft.
Yep.
Now you've done it back-to-back years. Pratt's just won a lot of games, and he's got some tattoos. He looks cool. Like, he's got some swag to him that
Love
if
the
you look at
swag.
Alex Magoo, you want a little bit of swag in that room, because Alex seemingly was Jordan Love's best friend. So you're going to have to outswag Magoo to be able to
you got to up
potentially
the floor,
stick.
the swag floor, as well as the competition floor, like the
100%.
skill floor. You got all the floors have to be elevated here.
You got to be adding a lot of things. You got to be adding a lot of things to the room.
And then finally, they got Kalen King, this corner from Penn State, who everyone and their mother who covers the draft tells you was great in 2022, not so good in 2023. Turn on the tape, and man, I love the traits. I love the physicality. I love the player as far as what he could become. I understand why the Packers took a flyer on this guy. I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to see how early he's allowed to get in the mix. Like, what opportunities is he going to have?
Mm-hmm.
Because mostly he's almost all play. He's played on the outside, right? He's not really been a slot guy. Although, who knows, man? Maybe they give him a whirl there. But I think, you talk about deep sub package, dime looks, etc. I'm interested to see how he competes out there, because, man, like I said, the traits, the physicality, you like it. I can see the projection, but
Yeah.
he did have a rough 2023.
Well, and I don't know how much of it you've seen, but, like, I don't know that as much of it was just him getting torched or playing where you know that your defense is better than everybody else, right?
Right.
Like, there
Yeah.
was no hero ball in his game in 2023,
Agreed.
where sometimes that helps you stand out at corner, right? And give you
Yeah.
more. But I mean, it's not like he never got thrown at, right? Like, he did
No.
get
Yeah. No.
thrown
No.
at,
No.
that they
Yeah.
had some success against him, but he wasn't allowing touchdowns. I think that there's so much variance and so many variables at that cornerback spot
Yep.
that I could see him not playing at all Robert Rochelle like, or all of a sudden week 6, you're like, wait,
Yeah.
he started a game and a half for you, and I'm
Right.
counting on Kalen King week
King
in and
King is
week
out
out to
there on the
ball. Like,
regular. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean,
Totally
I didn't
possible.
think Carrington Valentine, even though he was the
Another
Hinkle
seventh
squad,
round pick.
he was the Nitschke player of the year. It does
Right.
make you think that they got a lot of options there. And if you forget that Eric Stokes is on the football team, I understand why. They have now a couple of first round picks and a bunch of 7th-round picks that they're going to try to go at one of the most premier spots with.
Hey, man, but it's all about the competition, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm jonesing to see, and
What?
I'm jonesing to just get out there when the pads come on. We are so far away from it.
Oh yeah, we got a lot more time for that. So buckle up. But
Yeah.
when did you agree with a lot of the different responses that I was hearing about King's post-draft meeting? That he was more emotional than
No, he was very
you've heard
emotional.
many other players be in
I
that
th
spot, or
I think it's oftentimes somewhat when we get those guys on the calls after I mean, it's almost literally right after they get drafted, right?
yeah,
And then all of a sudden you're talking to the local media. Most of the guys I think have been coached up at this point by their agents and things like that, where it is very almost businesslike. I mean, we did hear Tucker Kraft last year. He was clearly had been drinking all night, and like he was hilarious. But
oh
more
yeah,
often than not, they're pretty buttoned up, right? So I think that adds to the fact that yeah, King was emotional, man, and he's definitely playing. I would think with a chip on his shoulder about he almost went undrafted, dude. Can you
yeah,
imagine that being talked about as you're going to be a first rounder coming off the 2022 season, and now here you are almost falling out of the draft
yeah. Like what?
entirely.
7 picks from falling out of the
That's
draft completely.
that's got to play on your mind, man. So
Hmm.
like he was emotional, and I get it. I totally get it. Like hopefully that gives him that little edge, right?
Yeah,
That
no doubt
little
about it.
competitive juice, so to speak.
Because rarely do you only need that situation. Do you only need that little bit of a kick? Because all these guys have gotten here because they have an insane competitive drive.
Exactly.
Sure can hurt to
Give him a
add
little
that little bit of
juice.
fuel
Give
to
him
the
a little
fire.
juice. Speaking of juice, I got to go get me some juice. Billy, I
That's what I'm
cannot
talking about.
tell you how much I love talking ball with you, man. This is the best. I
Hey,
absolutely
we're
love
gonna
it.
get through this period together. As you just
Yes,
mentioned,
we're
we
gonna
are
have to.
way too far from training camp. So these conversations are gonna keep us sane.
Yeah. Well, we'll be later in the week next week because I'm going down to New Orleans starting tomorrow, and I am going to Jazz
Ooh,
Fest. I'm going to see Foo Fighters. Going to see
you're gonna get
Kingfish.
drunk.
I'm gonna. Oh yes, sir. Yes, sir. If I drunk dial you, I'm sorry, but yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's
Well,
going to
never
be good
apologize
times.
for that. Also, appreciate you having me on. I apologize for being quick on the draft party. That is one of
Dude.
the coolest situations of all time. The amount of just sheer adrenaline when I jumped in the 6th round
Yes, sir.
for an offensive tackle out of Georgia State,
Let's
like that.
go.
That's unmatched excitement.
Some of it is just being punch drunk from being on the stream for like, at that point, I think we were had been there for like 5 hours. So,
Oh, had
you
to have.
know, by the time the seventh round rolls around, I'm ready to just jump out a window. But yeah, no, it's good. It's fun. And it's just great. Packers fans from all over the world, literally, like just hanging out, talking ball, talking about the pack, talking about the draft. Like,
And I want to
oh,
see
it's a good
Joseph's
time.
basement now.
I
Like
know, right?
after the entire draft board,
Yep.
now I want to see what it looks like. Like on this
The
Wednesday.
post draft board.
Has it are we already working on 2025 or
It
where
would
are we
have to
going?
be, right? I would think
That's
so.
awesome.
It's,
That's
you
awesome.
got to churn out that content. Billy, thank you so much, brother. I'll see you and talk to you next week.
All right, man. Enjoy the bayou.